But then, of course, there's also the 16th International MDS Symposium, which will be in Toronto in 2021. Please.
Thank you very much for people who have stayed behind. And again, want to echo Moshe's comments about this fantastic conference. And we have a very tough act to follow in the 16th conference that will take place in Toronto. So Karen Yee and I are the co-chairs of the meeting. And we are here to make the case to attract you to our beautiful city. So for those of you who don't know much about geography, including me, Toronto is, highlighted with this red arrow, is the southernmost part of Canada. And actually, it's the fourth most populated city in North America, and 25% of Canada's population lives within a 160-kilometer radius of Toronto. And I'm sorry to tell you, Denmark, but in a recent survey done by a global marketing company and Wharton, Canada ranked #1 for quality of life rankings and third overall. The other thing that Toronto is known for is the fact that it's one of the most multicultural cities in the world. It has a very large population of 6 million people, with half of Toronto's population born outside of Canada. And there are over 180 dialects and languages spoken in Toronto, as reflected by this pie chart. It's a huge city, of course, and the meeting is going to be taking place at the Sheraton Hotel, which is right downtown in, I don't know if there's a arrow, sort of in southern part, right over here, right near the lake, and close to lots of entertainment and restaurants. It's very easy to travel to Toronto. We have 2 airports, Pearson being the biggest one, and as you can see from these 2 figures, that there are many routes from both North American cities, South American cities, Europe, and Asia to Toronto on a daily basis. There's also now a subway that you can take directly from the airport down to Union Station, which is walking distance to the hotel where the conference will be taking place. And Toronto actually has, to its credit, some illustrious scientific discoveries over the years. The Connaught Antitoxin Laboratory that developed tetanus vaccines in World War I started in 1917 and then went on to develop diphtheria vaccines and polio vaccines. Everyone is familiar, of course, with Banting and Best in making their discovery of insulin and winning the Nobel Prize a year later. In 1930, Pablum was developed at the Toronto Six Children Hospital. The first cardiac pacemaker was developed by Dr. Bigelow. It was about the size of a microwave initially, but of course led to huge developments in the clinic. And Till and McCullough discovered stem cells in 1963. Tak Mak, who originally is from China but has done most of his research in Toronto, of course, is credited for discovering the T-cell receptor, and then known to virtually every leukemia and MDS researcher. Dr. John Dick is also from Toronto, who is credited for discovering the cancer stem cell and leukemia stem cells and pioneering methods for evaluating it in the clinic and in mouse models.
So as Rena mentioned, there's been a number of seminal discoveries that have been made in Toronto, but more recently, John Dick and Liren Schloss have identified pre-leukemia stem cells in AML patients. They've also developed a mutation-based prediction of AML risk in normal individuals. Daniel DiCarvalho's group has developed methodology for detection and classification of circulating cell-free methylated DNA in cancers, including hematological malignancies. And Jean Wang's group has developed or devised a leukemic stem cell signature for determining which patients with AML would not benefit from standard chemotherapy. And as we learned in this conference, this score system is also applicable to patients with myelodysplastic syndrome. Moreover, we're also interested in developing novel therapies for patients with acute leukemia and myelodysplastic syndrome, such as CFI 40945, which is a polo-like kinase 4 inhibitor that was developed by TACMAC's group and is currently in phase 1 clinical trials in patients with relapsed refractory AML or MDS. Also, on a clinical side, the Canadian National MDS Registry was established in 2011, and it has about 1,000 patients enrolled right now, and it was established really to quantitate and also identify health utilities as well as quality of life and overall outcomes in patients with myelodysplastic syndrome. So I guess the other issue is, what do people do on their downtime when they come to Toronto or live in Toronto? We have a world-renowned Canadian opera company. We also have the National Ballet of Canada, which is led by Karen Kane, the Toronto Symphony, and also a live theater or musicals, and one of which is the Tony Award-winning musical Come From Away. There's also world-class art and historic opportunities, such as visiting the Royal Ontario Museum, the Art Gallery of Ontario, the Gardner Museum of Ceramics, and the Aga Khan Museum of Islamic Art, among others. So for the sports fanatics, I guess, we do have competitive teams right now. So there's the Toronto Raptors, and up to like a couple of weeks ago was the Toronto Maple Leafs, which were in contention until they were knocked out by the Bruins. And we had the Blue Jays and also Toronto Football Club. And finally, as Rena mentioned, Toronto is really a multiculturally, ethnically diverse city. It's probably one of the most ethnically diverse cities in the world. So there's a lot of great neighborhoods in Toronto. I've listed a couple of them. One of them is Yorkville with its upscale shopping. There's Trinity Bellwood area where there's amazing restaurants and stores. There's the Kensington Market with vintage stores and street art, and I've listed some other ones, but not all the areas. But probably also for the foodies, the top 5 restaurants in Canada are located in Toronto, and number 1 being ALO. So I guess another feature is, although it's sunny in Copenhagen today, the average high in Toronto, sorry, I'm from Montreal originally, but in Toronto is 19 degrees Celsius, and it has only 7 days of rain. I didn't put up a slide here, but we talked about the exchange rate. So for people that are still in the European Union in 2 years' time, the conversion from euro to Canadian is still going to favor the euro. Okay, and then I guess, sorry, I pushed this forward, but the final reason of why to come is really because we're Canadian, And it's really, we're warm, friendly, and courteous.
We apologize a lot.
Yeah.
And if that's not enough to tantalize you, here's a sexy promotional video from Toronto to entice you to come for the meeting in 2 years' time.
We do hope all of you guys will show up in 2 years' time in Toronto 2021.
See you there.
Yeah, with this, I just want to say, go out and enjoy the Danish sunshine. It might not last long. And then have a safe journey home.